Deep inside Africa, there is a volcano so unstable that its lava moves faster than a speeding car. And over 1 million people chose to rebuild their homes right at the foot of it after it already destroyed their city once. That is not desperation. That is a calculated decision. And the reason behind it will make you rethink everything you think you know about how humans survive. Africa is the most misunderstood continent on the face of the earth, and right now we are about to fix that. Join us and let's discover the geological nightmares, ancient human engineering, and cultural phenomena that exist nowhere else on Earth. Let's go.
Number 13. Marula Tree. There is a tree in southern Africa that has been running an open bar for elephants, baboons, and warthogs for thousands of years, and nobody has ever managed to close it down. Between December and March, the marula tree drops its ripe, sugar-loaded fruit directly onto the sun-baked ground. The African heat does what it does. The fallen fruit ferments naturally, producing alcohol. What follows is exactly what you are imagining. 5-ton elephants staggering sideways into acacia bushes, baboons walking in circles, warthogs sitting very still, looking deeply confused about where they are. This is real. It has been documented by researchers and filmed countless times across southern Africa. But here's what most people never find out. The marula tree is one of the most economically valuable trees on the entire continent. Its fruit carries several times the vitamin C of an orange. Crack open the hard kernel inside and you find a golden oil so prized that European cosmetic companies import it and sell it for premium prices as a luxury ingredient. In many southern African cultures, this tree has a completely different name, the marriage tree, because it is believed to carry spiritual influence over fertility and is woven into sacred wedding ceremonies stretching back further than written history. The same tree that gets elephants drunk is also the spiritual anchor of people's most sacred moments. Africa operates on a frequency that the rest of the world is still trying to tune into, and we are just getting started. And if a tree that ferments alcohol in the wild surprises you, wait until you hear about the city that was built on water to survive a kingdom's army.
Number 12. Ganvi. In the year 1625, a group of people in what is now Benin made a decision that should not have worked. Facing raids by warriors of the Dahomey kingdom who were capturing people for the Atlantic slave trade, the Tofinu people took everything they owned and moved into the middle of a lake. Not onto the shore, not near the water, into it. They built their homes on wooden stilts above the surface of Lake Nokue and simply never came back to land. And the reason they were safe there is extraordinary. The Dahomey warriors held a sacred spiritual taboo against fighting on water. The lake was not just a refuge, it was a force field. Today, what began as a desperate act of survival is a fully functioning city. Ganvi is home to tens of thousands of people. There are homes, schools, churches, markets, and restaurants, all suspended above the water on stilts. No streets, no cars, no sidewalks, just canoes cutting silently through the waterways every single morning, carrying children to school and merchants to market. The Tofinu also invented something brilliant to survive inside the lake, a system called akaja, where submerged branches are placed strategically on the lake floor to create artificial fish habitats. Subsistence engineering in the middle of a crisis. The name Ganvi translates to, "We are saved." 4 centuries later, the floating markets still open every day. A city built from terror became a civilization built from water. But as extraordinary as it is to build a city on a lake to survive an army, there is a place in Africa where the ground itself has been doing something for decades that scientists cannot fully explain.
Only 1% of people know the dark truth behind what we are about to show you next. If you want to be part of the few who actually know what's happening in the world, subscribe and leave a like right now. Done? Look at this.
Across hundreds of kilometers of the Namib Desert in Namibia, the ground has been punching perfect circles into itself for as long as anyone has recorded. Millions of them, almost geometrically identical. each one a bare, dead patch of earth ranging from a couple of meters to the size of a small house, 15 meters wide, surrounded by a clean ring of taller, greener grass. From the air, the landscape looks like it was designed by a machine. Scientists spent decades locked in a serious academic fight over what is causing this. One camp said underground termites. The other said the circles form because the grasses themselves are competing for water in one of the driest environments on Earth. Recent research broke the tie. When rain falls in the Namib, it disappears fast. The bare center of each circle loses its seedlings because moisture vanishes before roots can establish. But that dead zone reduces competition for the surrounding ring of grass, which survives directly because of the barren center. The circles are not a mystery caused by something attacking the landscape. They are the landscape protecting itself. Scientists now call this one of the clearest examples of vegetation's self-organization on Earth. Millions of circles, each one a survival mechanism that the grass built on its own without any blueprint, driven purely by desperation for water. The Namib Desert has been designing its own geometry for thousands of years, and nobody told it to. The desert inventing its own patterns is remarkable enough, but there is a community in Africa that invented an engineering system so precise, so human, that UNESCO had to recognize it. And they built the whole thing by hand, 30 meters underground.
In the borderlands, where southern Ethiopia meets northern Kenya, the land offers almost nothing. Rainfall is scarce, the sun is relentless, and the only permanent water available sits more than 30 meters underground. That is deeper than a 10-story building is tall, accessible only through shafts dug entirely by hand. The Borana people built those shafts, straight down into the earth, reaching groundwater that never dries, through rock and soil and nothing but human effort. To bring that water to the surface, teams of men descend into the darkness and form a human chain, each man standing above the next inside the shaft, passing buckets upward in a relay that can involve dozens of people at once. And while they work, they sing, not casually, precisely. The chants are coordinated and rhythmic, specifically designed to keep the timing of the bucket passing locked in sync from the bottom of the shaft to the top. Break the rhythm, miss a beat, and the entire chain collapses. The songs celebrate cattle, ancestral lineages, and pastoral life because water and cattle are the same thing in Borana society. One cannot exist without the other. The wells are called Tula wells, and access to them has traditionally been managed through the Gada system, an indigenous Oromo governance structure so sophisticated in its approach to leadership, law, and resource management that UNESCO formally recognized it. This is not a primitive workaround. This is a precisely engineered solution to an impossible environment, performed in harmony, maintained across generations. The Borana turned survival into music. Human engineering in the face of impossible conditions is one of Africa's defining signatures. But nothing in engineering, human or otherwise, prepared anyone for what termites have been quietly building across this continent for millions of years.
Number 9. African termite mounds. Forget every building humans have ever constructed. The most architecturally complex structures relative to the size of their builders exist in sub-Saharan Africa, and the builders are insects barely 3 millimeters long. African termite mounds can tower several meters above the ground, stretch many meters wide, house millions of occupants, and maintain a self-regulating internal climate regardless of the temperature outside. To put that in perspective, if a termite were scaled up to human size, their mounds would make the Burj Khalifa look modest. Some African termite species maintain underground fungus gardens inside the mound, cultivated farms where they grow their own food supply, making them some of the only insects on Earth that practice true agriculture. As they move minerals from deep underground to the surface, they create pockets of supercharged soil where vegetation grows faster and denser than anything in the surrounding landscape. Every mound is simultaneously a city, a farm, a climate control system, and a wildlife hub.
Birds, lizards, snakes, and small mammals colonize abandoned sections. Successive colonies rebuild and expand the same structure for centuries. Then satellite imagery revealed something that changed everything. The mounds are not randomly scattered. Across entire regions of Africa, they form enormous geometrically regular networks, a hidden architecture that is only visible from space. Insects invisible to the naked eye have been quietly redesigning the African continent for millions of years. They did not ask for credit. Nature has been engineering Africa in ways that humans are only beginning to map. But one human tradition in West Africa has been engineering something far more invisible, a direct bridge between the living and the dead.
Number 8. Egungun Festival. In Yoruba communities across Nigeria and Benin, the dead come back every year, not as a metaphor, not as a memory. According to Yoruba belief, the spirits of deceased ancestors physically return to the world of the living through masked figures known as Egungun, and the community does not treat this as performance, it treats it as fact. The costume is not a costume. Once a performer is fully dressed and ritually prepared in layers of richly embroidered fabric covering every inch of the body, the figure is no longer a person, it is the ancestor. To touch the fabric is to touch the dead. To disrespect the masquerade is to disrespect your own lineage going back generations. These costumes are handmade by specific families and passed down across centuries. Some of them are older than the countries that now surround the communities that own them. When the Egungun spins during the ceremony, the layered fabric explodes outward into a living, breathing wheel of color and motion that is accompanied by talking drums and ritual chanting audible across entire neighborhoods. Communities gather to receive blessings, settle disputes, and hear counsel from their ancestors. The Egungun is a judge, a healer, a messenger. This tradition has been practiced continuously for centuries, and it remains fully alive today, unchanged in its core purpose. In a world that is accelerating toward forgetting, the Yoruba built a mechanism that makes forgetting structurally impossible. The Yoruba found a way to keep the dead present among the living. But there is a festival in Benin that goes even further, one that combines ancestral power with a spiritual tradition that shaped an entire diaspora and is still profoundly misunderstood by most of the world.
Number 7. Fête du Vaudon. Every year on January 10th, the city of Ouidah in Benin hosts a national holiday that the rest of the world has almost entirely misread. The Fête du Vaudon, the Vaudon Festival, is not what Hollywood turned it into. There are no wax dolls with pins, no curses. What there is, one of the oldest, most complex, and most alive spiritual systems on Earth, practiced by tens of millions of people across West Africa and throughout the African diaspora in Haiti, Brazil, Cuba, and the United States. During the festival, two masquerade traditions own the streets. The Zangveto, the guardians of the night, appear as towering spinning columns of layered straw, moving in ways that no visible human body should be able to move. Witnesses describe not being able to identify any physical form inside the spinning mass. Then come the Egungun, ancestral spirits crossing back through the boundary between worlds to bless the living. Ceremonies take place at the Temple of Pythons, where sacred snakes move freely among worshippers, and at the Gate of No Return, a monument on the Atlantic coastline marking the exact spot where enslaved Africans were loaded onto ships and lost to the continent. The festival holds the deepest grief and the most defiant spiritual power on the same ground at the same time. That is not a contradiction. That is the whole point. Vaudon was carried across the ocean in chains, survived centuries of suppression, and is still standing. That is the real story. Spiritual resilience has kept entire civilizations intact across this continent. But there is one place in Africa where the ground itself is so hostile that even microorganisms cannot survive, and NASA studies it to prepare for Mars.
There is a place in northern Ethiopia called Dalal that looks like it belongs on the surface of an alien planet. and NASA agrees. Dalal sits more than 100 meters below sea level inside the Danakil Depression, one of the lowest and hottest places on the surface of the Earth by average annual temperature. Beneath the ground, 3 tectonic plates are simultaneously pulling apart, creating one of the most geologically unstable zones anywhere on the planet. As the plates separate, magma rises and superheats ancient underground water. That pressurized, superheated water pushes through thick layers of primordial salt and erupts upward as hydrothermal vents, brine lakes, and mineral terraces that glow in vivid shades of yellow, green, orange, red, and white, all caused by the chemical reactions of sulfur, iron, volcanic gas, and salt interacting in open air. Some pools at Dalal approach a pH of 0. For reference, battery acid sits at pH 1. The combination of that acidity, the extreme heat, and the saturated salt creates conditions that dissolve most known materials within hours. And here is what stops scientists cold. Certain zones within Dalal are so extreme that no known microorganism can survive inside them. Not just hard conditions, a genuinely lifeless zone on the surface of Earth. NASA and the European Space Agency study Dalal extensively because it is the closest analog on this planet to what the surface of Mars and Jupiter's moon Europa actually looks like. To prepare for alien worlds, they come to Africa first. If Dalal is the most hostile ground on Earth, then the next entry is one of the most hostile bodies of water. But what lives inside it will completely contradict everything you just heard.
There is a tree in sub-Saharan Africa that is so ancient, so enormous, and so deeply embedded in human civilization that calling it a tree barely covers it. Some baobabs have been alive for more than 2,000 years. That means certain trees standing in Africa today were already old when the Roman Empire fell. They were already massive when Christopher Columbus was born. Their trunks can grow so wide that the hollow interior has room for actual buildings. The most documented example, the Sunland baobab in South Africa, which operated a fully licensed bar and wine cellar inside its living trunk from 1993 until the tree began collapsing in 2016. Customers sat inside a tree. The Ombalantu baobab in Namibia has served at different points in history as a chapel, a post office, and a military hiding site, one living organism performing the functions of 3 separate buildings across multiple centuries. The survival engineering is extraordinary. The trunk stores vast reserves of water, allowing the tree to endure years of drought in Africa's harshest climates. Its fruit, called monkey bread, carries exceptional levels of vitamin C and has been a cornerstone of nutrition and medicine for thousands of years. The bark is fire-resistant and can be harvested for rope, cloth, and baskets, and then it grows back, a 2,000-year-old tree that regenerates its own skin. The baobab does not just survive in Africa, it defines survival. 2,000 years of endurance is extraordinary for any living thing. But the next entry is a culture that has been engineering survival for just as long, and the tradition they built is unlike anything else in the world.
The Garawol Festival. The Wadabe people of Niger and Chad live by a code that inverts almost every assumption the outside world holds about gender, beauty, and power. The Wadabe are nomadic cattle herders who have spent generations adapting to the merciless climate of the Sahel, moving their herds seasonally across some of the most demanding terrain on Earth. And once a year, the men of the community spend hours painting their faces, applying elaborate ornamentation, and preparing to compete in front of an audience of women who will decide who among them is worth choosing. This is Garawol. The men line up and perform rhythmic dances and facial displays specifically designed to emphasize features considered beautiful: bright eyes, white teeth, height, and symmetry. They roll their eyes wide. They stretch their smiles. They move in synchronized rhythm for hours. The women watch, evaluate, and select. The men who are chosen are chosen. The men who are not are not. There is no ambiguity, no social buffer.
Garawal is a direct, unapologetic system of female choice in mate selection, practiced openly and celebrated publicly. The festival has become internationally famous because its visual language is so striking: painted faces, elaborate costumes, the raw intensity of performance. But its deeper meaning is simpler than it looks. The Wadabe built a society where male beauty is the currency and female judgment is the authority. They have been running it that way for centuries. It works. The Wadabe built a world where men perform and women choose. But there is one tradition in the Omo Valley of Ethiopia where identity is written directly into the body, and the world has been misreading it ever since.
Deep in the Omo Valley of southern Ethiopia, the Mercy people have been practicing one of the most visually arresting traditions of body modification in the world for generations, and the Western world has almost entirely misunderstood what it means. Some Mercy women wear large clay or wooden discs inserted into the lower lip. The process begins in adolescence with a small cut in the lower lip. Over months and years, the opening is gradually stretched until it accommodates a plate that can reach the diameter of a dinner saucer. The outside world looks at this and immediately reaches for narratives of suffering or subjugation. The Mercy push back on that with consistent clarity. For many women, the lip plate is a direct assertion of adulthood, beauty, and social identity. It distinguishes Mercy women within their community and signals something that cannot be Cajun or negotiated away. The origins remain debated. Some historical anthropological theories connect the practice to slave raiding periods in East Africa, suggesting it functioned as a deterrent. Mercy voices today center it in cultural expression and personal continuity. What is not debated is what surrounds this community right now. Agricultural expansion, tourism operations, and large regional development projects are reshaping the Omo Valley at accelerating speed. For many Mercy families, the lip plate has become more than beauty. It is active resistance, a declaration that the Mercy will not dissolve quietly into the world closing in around them. What looks like an ornament is carrying the weight of an entire civilization. Identity carved into the body is one form of resistance, but the next entry is a place where resistance took a completely different form and produced one of the most breathtaking geological sites that still confounds every scientist who studies it.
On the border of Zambia and Zimbabwe sits Victoria Falls, 1.7 kilometers wide, over 100 meters tall, and during peak flow, the largest curtain of falling water on the surface of the Earth. The roar is audible from 40 kilometers away. The spray creates a permanent cloud above the gorge that can be seen from space. And at the very lip of this cataclysm, right at the edge where the water drops over into the abyss, there is a swimming pool that tourists visit on vacation. During the dry season, roughly late August through December, the Zambezi River drops to a level where a naturally formed submerged rock ledge on the Zambian side creates a pocket of calmer water sitting right at the edge of the falls. Experienced local guides lead visitors across slippery volcanic rock to reach this pool. Once inside, called Devil's Pool, swimmers can float to the very rim and look directly over the edge into the 100-meter gorge below, while the full force of the Zambezi churns and crashes around them on every side. No glass walls, no safety cables, no barrier between the swimmer and a 100-meter drop, except the submerged rock ledge and the physics of the water. The pool only exists because of the precise seasonal hydrology of the Zambezi River and the specific volcanic geology of that exact location. Once the wet season returns and the river rises, it disappears entirely beneath the full force of Victoria Falls. 4 months a year, for a brief window, gravity offers you a seat at the edge of the most powerful waterfall on Earth. Some people take it. Sitting at the edge of a 100-meter waterfall in a natural pool is one of the most extreme things a human can voluntarily do on this planet.
Mount Nyiragongo. Inside Virunga National Park in the Democratic Republic of Congo sits one of the most dangerous volcanoes on Earth, and over 1 million people live directly in its shadow by choice. Mount Nyiragongo holds one of the largest and most active lava lakes on the planet inside its crater, a permanent lake of molten rock, glowing red at the summit, visible from the city below on clear nights. But what makes Nyiragongo categorically more dangerous than almost any other volcano on Earth is its lava chemistry. Its lava is unusually low in silica and rich in alkali minerals, which makes it extraordinarily fluid, closer to water than to the thick, slow-moving flows most people picture when they think of volcanic eruptions. In 2002, a major eruption sent lava flows racing through the city of Goma at speeds that gave residents almost no time to react. Entire neighborhoods were buried, hundreds of thousands of people fled, large sections of the city were destroyed. Then the eruption stopped, and the people came back. Not because they had no choice, because the volcanic soil surrounding Nyiragongo is among the most fertile on Earth, capable of supporting dense agriculture that feeds entire populations in a region where food security is a constant fight. The mountain destroys with one hand and feeds with the other. Scientists monitor Nyiragongo's lava lake and seismic activity around the clock because the volcano sits within the East African Rift System, where tectonic forces are literally tearing the African continent apart in slow motion, a geological process that will, millions of years from now, create an entirely new ocean where Goma stands today. The people living there are not ignoring the danger. They are calculating it. They decided the fertile soil, the community, the life they built there is worth the risk of a mountain that has already proven it will erupt again. That is not recklessness. That is the deepest form of human commitment to a place, and it is something you will only ever see in Africa.
If you thought this was terrifying, you are not ready for what they found in the video on your screen. Click it right now. The truth is worse than you think.